everybody. This is Caryn Kopp, Chief Door Opener, and Jack Daly, the professional sales coach. And we are here with another episode of Sales B12. This is the one dose of sales you don't want to miss. And today we're talking about something incredibly important, which is an uncertain economy. How do you achieve sales success in an uncertain economy? And Jack, I remember a lot of years ago, you and I have known each other for a long, long time. And a lot of years ago, you told me the story about how you grew a company like crazy during a very challenging time in the economy. So for the purposes of our listeners, how did you do that? What did you do? How did you create that success?
So Caryn, you do have a good memory. That was quite a while ago. Since then, I had two other companies that I also were confronted with some challenges. One of them, in fact, just in a summary way, we were Inc. number 10 on the Inc. 500. And the same year, because of market forces external to the company, I had to downsize from 275 people to 40 in a day, and then rebuild. And so, you know, that was cataclysmic. The other time that you were recounting was when I was in the financial services business and interest rates really spiked up. And here we are, where interest rates on mortgages, for example, are twice the interest rate that they were at the beginning of this year. And so that isn't just a message for real estate or mortgages. That's a reflection of a lot of things going on in the economy and the probability that interest rates are going to go up even further, which will have its effects on the economy. So in answer to the question, there's a lot of things that go into being successful in a challenging marketplace. First and foremost, is not something that's tactical, and that's the 6 inches between our ears. You can decide whether you're going to succeed or you're going to go and lump yourself into all the excuse givers of, well, it wasn't my fault, it was this and that and this. And so I have two resources in the attitude section. 50% of the answer to your question, how do you deal in this challenging or ever-changing marketplace, 50% or more is your attitude. And so I have two tactical resource activities for our listeners. Both are books. One is Mindset, and that's written by Carol Dweck. And she basically says people come in two versions, a growth mindset or a fixed mindset. The beauty is we're not born that way. We get to choose, and we can make that choice at any moment in our life. And a growth mindset says there's a lot of change going on, and a lot of it looks like it's downhill coming at me really harshly. And we can say, wow, there's got to be a ton of opportunity in this. Or you can have a fixed mindset and say, I'm screwed. And the growth mindsets are the people that carry and ride the top of the wave. They're the people that succeed. The second book is called Relentless. Now, there's a couple books out called Relentless. The one I'm talking about is by Tim Grover. And he's the guy that was the mental and physical trainer for people like Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. And he talks about operating at a level that's way beyond anybody else in your marketplace, and the things that you need to do in order to get there. And so much of it, again, goes to the 6 inches in our head. You have to choose that you want to get there, right? So that's the first of 4 things I want to share with our listeners. The second, I've talked about on other B12 vitamins before, and that is HPAs, high payoff activities. There, you have to be so disciplined about your time. You have to make sure that what you're spending the time on is the most important things that you could be spending your time on. And we can get very distracted along the way, and we can go really south in a changing environment. You have to regularly examine, is given the marketplace today, these are the things that are going to move the dial, Are they going to move it, right, in our direction? The third thing is calling on the right accounts. And I'm going to give the listener 3 categories of calling on the right accounts. One of them is your existing accounts. In other words, the easiest sale to make is the one where people are already buying from you. You have gotten trust. And so go wide and go deep and make sure that you're doing everything that you can to get more business out of your existing. The second is something that I call leveraging your swim coach. Now, on my website, jackdailysales.com, there are 4 magazines that are free for the listener to download. There's one that has a cover story that's a 2-page article on who is your swim coach. And it basically has to do with leveraging centers of influence. And that is the easiest path to deal in this difficult environment. And then the third is a generality statement, and that is call on less people more frequently. Selling is the transfer of trust, and too many salespeople calling on too many people that don't deserve to be called on. And we've seen it over and over and over again, particularly in a changing environment. Make sure that you're calling on the right, best clients and prospects. And then the fourth, and I'll wrap it up, and then I want to ask you a question, and that is help your clients. And what I mean by that is don't sell. If you want to talk about being successful in a tough environment, the people you're calling on are dealing in the tough environment as well. They don't want to be sold to in the tough environment. What they want is you to help them. And by the way, as you're helping them along the way, they tend to buy from you. So it's putting your customer in a priority position. But look, I gave you my story about taking a tough economy and doing success. Well, you just went through that in 2021. If I remember correctly, 60% of your business, and you still found your way onto the Inc. list of fast-growing companies. I mean, like, you got the answer. Tell us what you did.
Yeah, during the pandemic, it was a very interesting time. Within a week and a half, 60% of our client hours went away because several of our clients were afraid to talk to their prospects when times were tough. And I said to them exactly what you said. Your prospects need to hear from you when times are good and when times are bad. When times are bad, they're facing difficult challenges too. Where are you? But they couldn't bring themselves to get out of their own way and have those conversations. So what were we to do? Well, first of all, I run a company of door openers. So we put our door openers to work for us. And boy, was I glad I had that experience, right? We had more of our people working for us than we ever had in the history of our company, 23 years old. And so what did we do? We did exactly what you just recommended, was to spend time focusing on those prospects who were more likely to spend, more likely to be in market, who needed our help for particular reasons. So we were very focused and strategic. We took a look at the markets. Who needs us most? And we found that there were certain companies that were going through what we call trigger moments. And so one of the ones that we chose, I'll share with you, was banks. Banks were going through an incredible trigger moment in the course of the pandemic because of PPP, no matter whether you were on the low end of the employee side or the high end of the employee side, all companies were having either a great experience or a terrible experience with their banks. So that put a lot of CEOs and CFOs of major companies in the market looking for a new bank. The banks were busy trying to protect the clients they had, and their relationship managers didn't have time to go out into the market and talk to the CEOs and say, come here, we're going to take care of you. So that's what we did. We contacted the CEOs of these banks and let them know that we can be an extension of their sales team and go out and talk to these CEOs, get them meetings with those CEOs so that they can then become clients of the bank. Well, certain banks were very interested in having that help. And as we started to close business, our door openers went on to these programs and our business grew and grew. And that's just one particular market, but it was how we took a look at the market and said, where are the trigger moments? Who needs us? Who's going to be spending anyway, despite what's going on? People, Jack, asked me during this time, how do you find buyers who are spending? And this is one of the things I recommend they do, is to look at the market a little differently and identify the narrow segments of the market where people had to do things anyway, despite uncertain times.
It reminds me of, I think we're going back to the beginning of the pandemic, but as a speaker, an awful lot of speakers waved the white flag and said, well, I speak to large groups of people and I travel, and both of those are off the table. I, on the other hand, said, hey, if everybody's having this difficulty, there's a win in here. I just need to find it. And so I literally hired a crew to come into my house and build a virtual studio, professionally done. And by June, 3 months into the pandemic, set a Guinness World Record for 21,261 people tuning in. So it would have been difficult for me to reach 21,000 people without the Zoom, right? And so I turned that into an advantage rather than a disadvantage and said, if everybody's vacating the marketplace, more for me. So actually, my business thrived during the pandemic, and yet you would have painted the picture very, very dull. That goes back to the first point. It's attitude, it's mindset. How can I make this a win? Make it a win for your client, make it a win for you. That's the deal.
So what would you say to the leaders right now, aside from the 4 things that you shared before? What would you say to them now? What can they do? Yeah,
so one's a play off on the attitude, and that is right from Jim Collins' book, The Stockdale Paradox. So when Admiral Stockdale was in a POW camp, he was one of the survivors. The people with the most positive attitudes actually died in the POW camps. But what he did is he had a paradox that he held, and he woke up every day and said, things are really tough, really, really tough. This day's going to suck, but I'm not going to die here. I'm going to live. This is going to be over, and I'm going to come out of this and have really great times ahead of me. That is something that the leader needs to communicate to their people. Don't paint the picture that, hey, this economy is something other than it isn't. Paint it real, but give them reasons to be optimistic. The second thing that I would say has to do with celebrating successes. More recognition. Find ways to give people attaboys. And the third of 3 things I would tell you is inspect what you expect. Things that get measured get done. And so find the KPIs that are going to make the biggest difference and make sure that people are doing them. And I don't know what you would add to that list, but take a crack at the leadership level.
Yeah, at the leadership level, carve out time for business development and make sure your people are doing it too. Jack named 3 areas of business development, and I gave you some ideas of how to focus and make sure that you're spending the time on business development, talking to prospects who are more likely to move forward sooner during this time period. Make sure your people are carving out enough time for business development. If you find them stymied or challenged by getting in the door, call us, because we will help you to figure this out so that you don't have to ride out a market that may never be right for you, but rather find the market that is right for you and get those initial meetings with those prospects. If you are not talking to your prospects, your competitors will. So it's really important that you do this.
Hey, Caryn, I know you want to wrap this thing up. This has been an important topic. We went longer than we would typically do on this, but it's that important, okay? But all I want to say, and I know that this is self-serving for you, but you're not the self. I'm doing it. Look, I send clients to you regularly and ongoing, and my clients that I send to you, this is what their message is. My salespeople are spending so much time trying to get through the gatekeeper, and what they're really good at is closing. What they're really good at is doing the deal, but it seems like they spend 80 to 90% of their time running around trying to get in to pitch, as opposed to the opportunity to close. So you know what? Just if you're the guys opening up the doors and you can set the meetings, and if you're of a business, the door opener is the play.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that, Jack. And from you, it means so much. So thank you for that. And thank you for trusting us with your clients so we can help them to be better in sales and accelerate their success as well. We thank you for listening to our episode of Sales B12. We hope this is going to help you succeed through this challenging and uncertain time. And we invite you to listen to other episodes of Sales B12 as well. See you soon.